AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister for ruining her wedding? I, 27F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Emma, 30F. Growing up, we were very close at times, but we also had periods where we barely spoke. Our parents were divorced, and Emma often acted as a parent figure, which caused tension between us. Recently, that tension came to a head at her wedding. Emma got married to her fiancé, Daniel, last month. I was a bridesmaid, and leading up to the wedding, things were going okay. There were the usual small disagreements about dresses, hair, and flowers, but nothing major. The problem started the night before the wedding during the rehearsal dinner. Emma's fiancé's family was there, along with a few of our extended relatives, and the conversation turned to family dynamics. I made a joke about our parents' divorce, something I've joked about with Emma privately many times. I didn't think it was inappropriate because it was just a lighthearted tease about how chaotic our childhood was. Emma, however, immediately got upset and told me that I had to apologize to everyone at the table. I felt blindsided because I genuinely didn't think I had said anything offensive. I apologized to her privately, but she wanted me to apologize in front of everyone. I said I wasn't comfortable doing that, as I didn't think I'd said anything that required a public apology. She started crying and stormed out of the room. The next day, at the wedding, things got worse. During the ceremony, Emma asked me to stand up straight in a very tense voice. Later, while taking family photos, she whispered for me to smile more and act happy, which made me feel extremely uncomfortable. Then, during the reception, her maid of honor, who is also a mutual friend of ours, pulled me aside and told me that Emma was saying I had ruined her special day and that I needed to make a public apology or leave. I was shocked because I had done nothing to ruin the wedding. I tried to calmly talk to Emma, but she refused to speak to me and said I had already embarrassed her in front of everyone. By this point, I felt like I was being set up to take the blame for things that were out of my control. During the first dance, I accidentally bumped into Daniel while reaching for a napkin, causing him to spill a drink on his suit. Emma completely lost it, and her mother came over and scolded me in front of all the guests. At this moment, I felt humiliated and trapped. I decided to leave the reception for a few minutes to cool down. When I came back, Emma confronted me in front of the wedding party, yelling about how I had completely ruined everything and that I was selfish for refusing to apologize publicly. I stood my ground and told her that while I was sorry if I had upset her with my joke, I did not ruin her wedding. I also reminded her that the spill incident was an accident and that blaming me for every minor mishap was unfair. She then accused me of being unsupportive and said that if I didn't apologize publicly, I was choosing to be the villain in her wedding story. The tension escalated, and the night ended with me leaving early after a huge argument in front of several relatives. After the wedding, Emma blocked me on social media and has not spoken to me since. Our parents and some family members have taken her side, saying that I should have apologized and kept the peace, even if I didn't feel I did anything wrong. Others, including some mutual friends, have reached out to me privately, saying that Emma's reaction was extreme and that she was unfairly putting the responsibility for the wedding's outcome on me. I have been reflecting on my actions, and I still feel that apologizing publicly for something that was, at worst, a private joke is unreasonable. I regret upsetting Emma, but I do not think I ruined her wedding. I also feel conflicted because this has caused a serious rift in our family, and I hate that it's come to this. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to apologize publicly to my sister and leaving the reception early? Or was Emma overreacting and unfairly blaming me for things that weren't my fault? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to host my family's holiday after they disrespected my house rules. This is going to be a long one, so bear with me. I, 27F, have always had a pretty complicated relationship with my family. I grew up in a large household with my parents and three siblings, and my parents were very particular about cleanliness and boundaries. As I got older, I moved out and started living on my own, which I love. I take a lot of pride in my apartment. It's small but meticulously maintained, and I have very strict rules about who can borrow things, how people enter my space, and generally what is acceptable behavior in my home. Fast forward to this year. It was the first holiday season since I moved into a bigger apartment, and my family kept hinting that they expected me to host the holiday dinner this year. Normally, I would have said yes because I enjoy hosting, but my family has always been difficult in terms of respecting boundaries. My parents are not malicious, but they're extremely entitled. They expect me to accommodate them fully, down to the exact way they want the house set up, the food, and even the seating arrangements. So, I decided to try something new this year. I made it clear weeks in advance that I was happy to host, but with some conditions. Everyone had to clean up after themselves, including putting dishes in the dishwasher and wiping counters. No one was allowed to touch my personal things, including my kitchen gadgets and my expensive coffee machine. I would cook a main meal and provide drinks, but everyone else had to bring their own sides or desserts. No one announced the guests. I wanted to know exactly who was coming. I thought these rules were reasonable, and I communicated them multiple times, both verbally and through a group text. I even offered to help them plan what they were bringing to make it easier. The day of the holiday arrived, and I started preparing a roast and some sides. My parents and siblings showed up, and almost immediately, problems began. First, my mom walked into my bedroom without asking, complaining about needing more space to hang her coat. I reminded her firmly that this was my personal space and asked her to stay in the entryway. She huffed and muttered something about how I was too controlling. Then, my younger brother, who is 24, took it upon himself to start using my kitchen appliances without asking. He started making a dessert in my stand mixer, and when I reminded him not to use my appliances, he rolled his eyes and said, "It's just a mixer. Calm down." I told him it wasn't about the mixer, it was about respecting my rules in my home, and he scoffed and walked away. Things got worse when my dad decided to move all the furniture in my living room because he thought it would be better for conversation. I spent 20 minutes putting it back the way I had arranged it and explained that I had a specific setup for safety and comfort. He sighed and said I was overreacting. At this point, I was feeling really frustrated, but I tried to focus on the meal and keep things civil. Unfortunately, my siblings then started bringing their friends, despite me clearly saying that only family members were allowed. One of my brother's friends even sat on my new couch without asking, spilled a drink, and left a stain. I was livid. I told everyone that the holiday was over if my rules weren't going to be respected, and I asked all uninvited guests to leave. The fight escalated. My mom accused me of being selfish and ruining the holiday for everyone. My dad said I was being ridiculous and too sensitive. My brother called me controlling. My younger sister, who is 22, tried to mediate but ended up getting involved in the argument herself, arguing that I was being dramatic over furniture. I ended up asking everyone to leave because I was not going to have my home treated like a free-for-all. After they left, I was shaking with anger and tears. I had spent the entire morning preparing food, and all of my efforts were completely undermined. I spent the rest of the day alone, ate some leftovers, and tried to calm down. Since then, my family has been messaging me, calling me names like selfish, ungrateful, and controlling. They all insist that it was just a holiday and that I ruined it. I feel hurt and confused because I thought I was being reasonable. I made clear rules, offered a host, and yet they completely disregarded everything. I keep going over it in my head, wondering if I overreacted or if my anger was justified. I understand the holidays are about family and fun, but I also believe they are about respect. My apartment is my safe space, and it felt like my boundaries were being completely ignored. I don't know if I'm being too harsh or if my family is being unreasonable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my family ruin my house and insisting that my rules be followed, even if it meant ending the holiday early. AITA for refusing to lend my younger brother money after he got himself into serious debt, even though our family is pressuring me to help. I, 27M, have always been responsible with my finances. I work a steady job in IT, save diligently, and try to make smart choices with money. My younger brother, Mike, 23M, on the other hand, has always been a bit reckless when it comes to spending. Growing up, he was never great with money, but I always thought it was just a phase. That belief lasted until a few months ago, when I found out he had racked up over $15,000 in credit card debt and payday loans. Mike recently moved back home after living in another city for college, and during a family dinner, he casually mentioned the total debt he had accumulated. At first, I thought he was exaggerating, but then he laid out the numbers and it was real. He's now struggling to make minimum payments and keeps talking about how he doesn't know how he's going to survive the next few months. My parents immediately turned to me and my older sister, 30F, and asked if we could bail him out or at least lend him some money so he could get back on his feet. I told them that I wasn't comfortable lending him money. I explained that I understand he's in a tough situation, but bailing him out would likely just make him feel like he can continue making poor financial decisions without consequence. I suggested he speak to a credit counselor, explore debt consolidation options, or even get a part-time job in addition to the one he has, but I refused to give him any personal funds. I also reminded my parents that I work hard for my money, and I have my own bills and savings goals to consider. My parents were not happy. They accused me of being cold and unsupportive, saying that family should help family in times of need. My sister was more understanding, but suggested that I could at least lend him a smaller amount so he could pay off the highest interest loans. I still refused, explaining that even a small loan could create a dangerous precedent and might just encourage him to continue poor financial habits. Things escalated when Mike overheard our discussion. He confronted me and got really upset. He accused me of not caring about him and said that our parents always talk about family loyalty, but I'm the one actually practicing it by refusing to help him. He even went so far as to say that if I don't help, he'll probably have to declare bankruptcy, which would ruin him for life, and that it would be my fault for not stepping in. It felt manipulative, and I stood my ground. Since then, family gatherings have been tense. My parents have made passive-aggressive comments about my lack of compassion, and Mike keeps bringing up my refusal to lend him money whenever we talk. I feel guilty sometimes, but I also know that giving him money won't fix the underlying issues and could hurt both of us financially in the long run. I've tried to help in non-financial ways, like teaching him budgeting, helping him set up a repayment plan, and even looking into financial aid programs for people in debt. He appreciates some of it, but mostly sees it as condescending. I've also considered that my stance might make me look selfish, especially since our culture and family values put a strong emphasis on supporting each other financially. But I honestly believe that letting him face the consequences of his actions is better for him in the long term. I'm not heartless. I just think that money isn't the solution here, and caving in would only postpone the problem. My friends are divided. Some say I'm doing the right thing by protecting myself and encouraging responsibility, while others think I should at least lend him something to ease the immediate stress and help our parents feel better. I'm torn because I want to maintain good family relationships, but I also don't want to set myself up for financial strain or reinforce bad habits. So, AITA for refusing to lend my brother money, even though it's causing tension with my family. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her gender reveal-themed bridal party. So, this is going to be a long one, and I honestly feel like I might be overreacting, but hear me out. I, 27F, have a sister, Emily, 30F, who has always been a bit extra, but I've generally gotten along with her. She got engaged last year to her fiancé, Greg, 32M, who I actually like a lot. The problem started when she began planning her wedding. Emily has always been obsessed with the idea of being the perfect Pinterest bride, and recently she got into doing these gender reveal videos on social media. She doesn't have kids, but she's obsessed with the concept and has started throwing events themed around it. For some reason, she decided that her bridal shower would be a gender reveal party. Yes, a gender reveal party for herself. She explained it to me like this. She wanted the wedding colors to be a surprise, just like a gender reveal, but more fun. She said it would be a cute, playful way to get everyone excited for the wedding. The first red flag for me was when she started inviting my parents and other family members to participate in games where they'd guess her wedding gender and predict the colors before the big reveal. She even had custom confetti poppers made that were supposed to reveal her wedding colors during the shower. I tried to politely say it felt weird to me because it seemed more like a spectacle for social media than an actual celebration with friends and family, but she brushed it off. She told me I was just being a Debbie Downer and that I didn't get it. As the planning went on, it got worse. She started asking me to help her with the outfits for the shower. She wanted me to wear a shirt that would indicate my guess for the wedding gender, which basically meant dressing in either pink or blue. I told her that I was not comfortable participating in what felt like a bizarre game. She got visibly upset and said I was being unsupportive. At this point, I tried to compromise by saying I'd still attend, but wouldn't participate in the guessing game. She said that wasn't good enough and that my refusal would ruin the theme for everyone. She even said that Greg agreed with her. Then she sent out the invitations for the party, and they were posted online because she wanted to create hype. There were hashtags, social media challenges, and instructions for everyone to come prepared to guess. At this point, I started feeling like it wasn't just about a fun party anymore. It was a social media circus. I also realized that being publicly associated with this would make me feel awkward and uncomfortable, especially since I've always been more private. I spoke to my mom about it, and she said I should just play along to keep peace, but I honestly don't want to. My parents were a bit dismissive at first, but they didn't push too hard once I explained that I really didn't want to participate in what I saw as a weird, performative event. I even tried talking to Emily directly, explaining that I still love her and want to celebrate her wedding, but can't be part of this theme. I suggested attending the wedding itself, but staying out of the shower activities. She blew up at me, calling me controlling, judgmental, and selfish. She said that if I wasn't willing to participate fully in the theme, I shouldn't come at all. At this point, I told her I wouldn't be attending the shower, which led to her threatening that if I didn't go, she would uninvite me from the wedding. That honestly felt like blackmail. I asked Greg privately if he felt the same way, and he said he personally didn't care about the theme and thought I should do what made me comfortable, but he didn't want to argue with Emily. I tried to reason with her multiple times, emphasizing that I love her and her wedding is important to me, but I simply cannot be part of a gender reveal style event as an adult celebrating a wedding. The final straw came last week when she posted on social media a video showing people playing games with confetti poppers and me visibly not participating, even though I hadn't attended yet. She captioned it with a subtle dig at family members who don't support the fun. That's when I realized she's willing to publicly shame me for setting boundaries. After that, I confirmed with her that I wouldn't attend the shower, and she responded that maybe I shouldn't come to the wedding either. I told her that I hope she has a wonderful day, but I'll be celebrating her in my own way privately. Now, our family is split. Some say I'm overreacting and should just go to avoid family drama. Others think I have a right to set boundaries, especially since it's my comfort versus her social media obsession. My parents are worried about the tension at the wedding, and I feel guilty because I do want to be close to my sister. But honestly, I feel like she's prioritizing a public spectacle over the people who actually care about her. I also feel anxious about attending something that feels performative rather than a genuine family celebration. I understand she's excited and wants her wedding to be fun, but I honestly think this has gone way past a normal bridal shower. It feels like she's trying to force everyone into a theme that only she and social media will enjoy. I don't want to hurt her feelings, but I also don't want to compromise my comfort and boundaries just to avoid conflict. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to attend the shower and possibly the wedding because I won't participate in her gender reveal-themed bridal party? Character count, 6,543 if you want. I can also craft a part 2 version with more family drama and twists like the most viral Reddit AITA posts. It could hit closer to 7,000 and include messy but believable fallout. That usually makes stories blow up in popularity. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move in after a huge falling out over something I think he did. I, 24F, live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city. I moved here about 2 years ago for work, and since then, I've been living alone. I'm generally very independent and private, and I enjoy having my space just the way I like it. My sister, Laura, 27F, has always been a bit more chaotic, let's say, and tends to rely on other people for stability. A few months ago, she started dating someone named Jake, 30M. From the start, I wasn't super comfortable with him. He came across as very charming, but there were little red flags. He would overshare, be slightly manipulative in conversations, and seem to have a history of flaking on commitments. I didn't want to push my sister away, so I kept these thoughts mostly to myself, only mentioning them in passing to friends. About 6 weeks ago, I had a major incident with Jake. That's why I'm posting here. I was coming home from work around 7 p.m. when I noticed my apartment door slightly ajar. I live on the ground floor, so I immediately panicked. I called my landlord and then cautiously peeked inside. To my shock, I found Jake in my living room, sitting on my couch, scrolling through my phone while drinking one of my beers from the fridge. I froze at first, and when he saw me, he gave a weird smile and said, "Hey, Laura told me it's fine if I came over to check on you since you've been working late." I was furious and immediately told him to leave. He protested that he didn't know it was a big deal and that my sister said it was okay, but I had not spoken to Laura in over a week because she was out of town. I asked him if she had given him permission, and he shrugged and said, "Well, she said something like it's fine if I check in sometimes." I called Laura immediately, and she said she never gave him permission to enter my apartment. She admitted that she probably wouldn't have stopped him, but she didn't expect him to actually break into my place. Jake left after I told him I would call the police if he didn't, but the whole night I was shaking and scared. I filed a report, though I didn't press charges because I wanted to avoid escalating things legally unless necessary. Since then, I've been extremely wary of Jake. Laura has been apologetic, saying she didn't realize he'd act this way and that he's actually a good guy once you get to know him. I didn't respond much because I was still processing everything. Now, the real issue. Laura recently lost her apartment unexpectedly and asked if Jake could move in with me temporarily. I said no immediately. I explained that after what happened, I don't feel comfortable having him in my apartment. Laura argued that he's her boyfriend, that they are serious, and that I should put the past behind me. She also said that it's just for a few weeks and that I could avoid him easily since I work late. I refused again, and she got extremely upset. She accused me of being overreactive, saying that I was punishing her relationship because of one mistake and that I was being unfair to Jake. Our mutual friend started getting involved, and suddenly I was being portrayed as the mean sister who can't support her sibling. I tried explaining that it's not about punishing her, it's about my boundaries and safety. I said that if the roles were reversed, if a stranger broke into her apartment, she would probably expect the same level of protection for herself. I even offered to help her find a new apartment or let her stay temporarily myself, just without Jake, but she rejected all of that. The tension has gotten so bad that she hasn't spoken to me in over a week. Our parents are now upset with me, saying I should compromise for family, but I feel like I would be compromising my safety and peace of mind, which seems unreasonable to give up just to avoid conflict. I'm starting to feel guilty because everyone is painting me as the bad guy, but at the same time, I can't shake the feeling that letting someone who previously entered my home without permission stay with me is a huge risk. I don't want to have to sleep with a knife under my pillow or monitor him all the time. So Reddit, am I really the asshole for refusing to let Jake move in, even temporarily, or am I justified in setting this boundary? AITA for refusing to let my cousin's kids stay at my house after a family reunion incident. So a little background. My 28F extended family is huge, and we tend to have these massive reunions every year. Everyone from my mom's side shows up, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole 9 yards. Normally, it's chaotic but manageable. This year, the reunion was at my parents' house, and it was especially crowded because a bunch of my cousins from out of state were coming. One of those cousins, let's call her Mia, 32F, has a 6-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan is an energetic, curious kid, and Mia is known for being a bit laissez-faire with him, which usually works okay in short bursts, but can be intense when it's extended time. I've babysat Ethan a few times before, and while I like him, he's very high energy and can be a handful. Anyway, the reunion was going fine at first. People were catching up, playing games, eating tons of food, the usual chaos. I was helping my mom in the kitchen when I noticed Ethan running around unsupervised. That's not unusual, but then he started climbing the banister in the living room, swinging from it like a monkey. I shouted for him to stop, and he fell. He didn't hurt himself, thankfully, but he knocked over a large vase and it shattered. Mia was nearby and didn't react for a few seconds, just watching him like she couldn't believe it happened. I snapped at her, saying she needed to supervise her kid better, especially around fragile things. She got defensive, saying I shouldn't yell at her child and that he's just a kid. I reminded her that it's not okay to let a kid climb dangerously, especially in someone else's house. She rolled her eyes, muttering that I was overreacting. Things escalated later that night. Ethan found a jar of my expensive homemade jam in the kitchen. I caught him with it before he could open it, but in the process, the jar slipped and broke on the floor. This time, I lost my temper. I grabbed a broom and cleaned up while telling Mia firmly that she needed to take responsibility for her kid. She snapped back, saying, "You're treating my son like a criminal. He's 6. The argument got loud enough that my other cousins had to step in. The next day, I woke up to a text from Mia. She was upset because she said she felt I was attacking her parenting and that I made her feel unwelcome. She also mentioned, casually, that Ethan would probably want to stay at my place the next weekend while she and her husband went on a short trip, and she assumed it would be fine since we're family. I froze. No, I'd spent the last 48 hours dealing with her kid climbing on everything, breaking things, and basically being unmonitored, and the idea of him staying at my house for an entire weekend was exhausting and stressful. I politely but firmly told her no. I said I didn't think I was a good fit to watch Ethan for that long, especially since I felt he needed closer supervision than I was able to give. I offered to help her find a local babysitter instead. Mia went ballistic. She called me selfish, said I was punishing Ethan, and implied that I was jealous of her vacation. My mom tried to mediate and reminded Mia that it's okay for me to say no and that I had every right to set boundaries in my own home. Mia's reaction? She stormed out of a group chat we all share, posting that I was the worst cousin ever and that my refusal was ruining the family dynamic. Now, my dad's side of the family is split. Some agree with me, saying that Ethan is a handful and that I was right to set boundaries. Others think I overreacted and that I should have been more accommodating, given that I have a good relationship with Mia and her son otherwise. A few relatives are saying I should suck it up for a weekend and stop making everything about rules and safety, which honestly makes me roll my eyes because we're talking about a small child who has already broken multiple items and climbed on dangerous surfaces. Mia hasn't spoken to me directly since the refusal, and I feel tense whenever our extended family gathers. I'm also second-guessing myself a little because I don't want to be seen as the mean cousin, but at the same time, the thought of being solely responsible for Ethan for a weekend gives me anxiety. I don't think I'm unreasonable, but maybe I could have handled it differently. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my cousin's child stay at my house after the reunion incidents. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of a last-minute demand from my in-laws. I, 26F, have always had a fairly strained relationship with my older sister, Emily, 30F. Growing up, we were close in age, but very different in personality. Emily is very controlling and perfectionistic, while I'm more laid back and private. Despite that, I've always tried to support her. My husband, Mark, 28M, and I got married 2 years ago, and we've generally avoided family drama as much as possible, mainly by keeping our own lives separate. Emily recently announced she was getting married. I was genuinely happy for her, and I RSVP'd yes to her wedding months ago. Her fiancé, Jason, is nice enough, and I wanted to be supportive, even if I knew Emily would want everything to go perfectly. My problem started a few weeks before the wedding. Emily called me out of the blue and told me that her mother-in-law, Linda, had requested that all wedding guests wear strictly formal black tie attire. Now, my issue isn't that I don't like dressing up. I love dressing up occasionally, and I even have a few formal outfits. But Mark and I had already chosen our outfits months ago, semi-formal dresses and suits we were comfortable in, as we assumed that was fine based on the original invitation. Also, a full black tie outfit requires renting a tuxedo for Mark, which we hadn't budgeted for, and my gown would need alterations. We tried to explain this to Emily, saying we had already prepared and that it was short notice for us. Emily got upset and said that attending the wedding in anything other than black tie would insult her and Jason, and that Linda had been very clear she wanted everyone dressed a certain way. I asked her why she hadn't mentioned this sooner, and she said it had been a last-minute decision from Jason and Linda, and it was now non-negotiable. I told Emily that we might have to decline attending if we couldn't find suitable outfits in time. I didn't want to cause conflict, but it seemed unreasonable to force guests to rent or buy entirely new outfits on a week's notice, especially since we had planned everything based on the original information. Emily then called me selfish and said that if we truly cared about her, we would do this for her wedding day. She also added that it was just clothes and that I was overreacting. I talked to Mark about it, and he agreed that while he understood Emily wanting things her way, we couldn't suddenly spend hundreds of dollars on clothes we didn't even like for a single day. We also didn't want to be uncomfortable or feel out of place, which seemed inevitable with such last-minute changes. I tried to compromise by suggesting we buy or rent what we could afford and find the closest thing to black tie that we could, but Emily refused and said if we weren't going full black tie, we shouldn't come at all. At this point, I told Emily that we probably wouldn't be attending. She exploded, sending me multiple texts calling me selfish, rude, and implying that I didn't care about her or her wedding. I tried to explain that we cared, but we had already prepared and budgeted for different attire, and that a last-minute demand wasn't something we could meet without significant expense and stress. The night before the wedding, Emily posted on social media that all her guests had complied with the black tie dress code and hinted that a few important family members chose not to attend. I was devastated, not only because I felt like she publicly shamed us, but also because my family was upset. Our parents called me crying, saying they didn't understand why we wouldn't just adjust. My cousins were on Emily's side as well, telling me that I should have just gotten over it because it was her big day. I've been getting mixed reactions from friends too. Some say I should have just gone and suffered through it, while others say Emily and her in-laws were being unreasonable and controlling. Mark and I are still processing the fallout, and honestly, it's put a huge strain on my relationship with my sister. So AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding over a last-minute dress code demand? Character count, 6,421 if you want. I can also write a second, even longer version hitting closer to 7,000 characters, with more family drama, subtle betrayals, and emotional layers. It would read even more like a top viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister name her baby after me when she's been constantly disrespectful toward me? So I, 28F, have a younger sister, Lily, 24F. We've had a complicated relationship for most of our lives. Growing up, our parents always favored her because she was the easier child, and I often got blamed for things that weren't my fault. I think it's fair to say I've spent a lot of my life trying to prove my worth. And one of the ways I've done that is by really carving out my own identity. Over the past few years, our relationship has improved, but it's still fragile. Lily can be incredibly charming, but she also has this pattern of being dismissive or outright mean if she doesn't get her way. I've learned to set boundaries, but it hasn't always been easy. About 6 months ago, Lily announced she was pregnant. I was genuinely happy for her and tried to offer support, even though I was a little nervous about how this would affect our dynamic. She's married to a guy named Tom, 26M, and while I've never been super close to him, he seems nice enough. When she told me, she said she wanted the baby to have a family name. She brought up that she was considering my name for the baby, which is Sarah. I was a little surprised, but thought maybe it was a way of honoring our family, so I didn't say much. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, Lily starts getting more serious about the baby's name. She told me she and Tom decided they really want to name the baby Sarah if it's a girl. At this point, I froze. I felt uncomfortable, but I didn't say anything right away because I wasn't sure how to bring it up without causing drama. Then things started to get weird. She began dropping hints about the name, talking to other family members, and even posting things on social media like, "I've always loved the name Sarah." People started tagging me in comments, saying how cute it would be if the baby had my name. I felt trapped. Everyone assumed I'd be flattered, but honestly, I felt invisible in the process. Lily hadn't asked me directly. She just acted like it was a done deal. I decided I had to speak up. I called her and told her I wasn't comfortable with her naming her baby after me. I explained that our relationship is complicated, and even though I love her, I didn't want a baby to carry my name when we've had so many unresolved issues. I also said I didn't want people to assume I approved when I hadn't been consulted properly. Her reaction was immediate and dramatic. She accused me of being selfish, saying I was overreacting and ruining a family tradition. She reminded me that she was the one having the baby and implied that my feelings were less important. She also said she had already told Tom and her parents about the name, and now changing it would confuse everyone. I tried to remain calm and reiterated that I just needed some space and respect for my feelings. Things escalated quickly. Our parents got involved. They said I was being unreasonable and that it was a beautiful gesture for Lily to want to name the baby after me. I tried to explain that I didn't feel honored. I felt like she was taking something personal from me without asking. But they insisted I was making it about me and that I should just let it go for the sake of family harmony. I told them that harmony isn't really the point if it comes at the expense of my comfort and boundaries. At that point, the conversation ended with everyone upset. Lily stopped speaking to me for a week, and my parents have been giving me the cold shoulder. Here's the thing. I really do want a good relationship with Lily, and I want to be involved in her child's life, but this feels different. This isn't about pride or control. It's about a name that's deeply personal to me. I feel like she hasn't respected my feelings or my autonomy. I've considered giving in and letting her use the name, but I think that would just make me resentful later. I've tried talking to some friends about this, and opinions are split. Some say I'm being overly sensitive and should just accept it as a compliment. Others say I have every right to set boundaries around my name and identity. I'm starting to wonder if I'm actually the unreasonable one. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister name her baby after me, even though it's a name she's always loved and a way she seems to want to honor me. Character count, 650 if you want. I can also draft a second long version with a twist ending that makes it even more dramatic and Reddit viral, still within 6,000 to 7,000 characters. This one would include interactions with extended family and a fallout at the baby shower. Do you want me to do that? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house after a massive fight that wasn't entirely his fault. So, a bit of background. I, 28F, live in a medium-sized city, have my own apartment, and have a fairly strict routine because of my job as a software engineer. I have a younger sister, Lily, 24F, who has been dating Mark, 26M, for about a year. I've always gotten along okay with Mark, but he and I are definitely not on the same wavelength. I'm very structured and private, and he's not. The drama started last weekend. Lily and Mark have been arguing about something small. Literally, I think it was about what movie to watch, and she came over to my apartment in tears. She explained that Mark had been kind of dismissive and rude, which isn't unusual for them, but she was really upset this time. I offered her a place to stay for the night, which she accepted. I have a small guest bedroom, so it's not like I was fully disrupting my space. The problem started when Mark texted her, saying he wanted to come over too. Lily said no, she just needed some space, but Mark insisted. She asked me if he could stay over for a few hours just to talk things out. I immediately said no. I didn't want to mediate or get involved in their argument. I also have a strict if someone is visiting, they don't just invite someone else rule, and Mark kind of ignores boundaries. Mark didn't take no well. He showed up anyway while Lily was in the kitchen making tea. He knocked on my door, and when I answered, he tried to charm his way in, saying he just wanted to apologize to Lily. I told him firmly that he was not allowed in, and he could leave. He tried to argue, and I said I would call him a ride if he didn't leave immediately. Eventually, he left, but not without yelling about how unfair I was being and that I was taking sides. That night, Lily and I talked extensively. She admitted that she was very emotional and probably overreacting by asking him to come over, but also said that Mark had no right to show up uninvited. I agreed, but we were both frustrated. The next morning, things escalated. Mark started texting me, saying I was the problem, and that my refusal to let him in was proof that I didn't care about my sister's feelings. He also called my apartment hostile and claimed I was being controlling. At first, I ignored it, but then he started calling repeatedly. I finally picked up and said that if he didn't stop, I would block his number. He got more aggressive, accusing me of family betrayal and implying that Lily might leave him over this. I hung up. Lily, meanwhile, felt stuck. She was upset that Mark was blowing up my phone, but she also felt guilty that her sister and boyfriend were now in conflict. She asked me if I could just give him a night, but I refused. I explained that letting him in after the way he acted would have set a bad precedent, and that I shouldn't be punished for him being unreasonable. She understood, but looked sad. Things got worse when I posted on social media a vague status about people not respecting boundaries. Mark saw it, obviously, and sent me a long, dramatic message calling me selfish and saying I was choosing my comfort over family. He also said I was turning my apartment into a fortress against him, and that he couldn't believe I would do this to my sister. At this point, I blocked him completely. Lily seemed to understand, but her friends and some family members started saying I was being unnecessarily harsh. They said that since Mark had apologized multiple times to Lily, I could have at least let him in for a night. Some suggested I put my sister's needs first, which felt very unfair because Lily hadn't really asked me to host him long-term, just for a brief visit to talk. I stuck to my decision. Over the next few days, Lily and I hung out, and she said she still supported me, but that Mark was really hurt and sulking. I know he feels wronged, but from my perspective, he broke the basic social rule of you don't show up uninvited to someone's home, especially after I already said no. I also felt like my boundaries weren't being respected, which is a big deal for me. The final straw was a family dinner 2 nights ago. Mark didn't show up, but everyone talked about how mean I was and why I couldn't just let him stay over. My parents said I should have just let him in and that I was being inflexible. I tried to explain my reasoning calmly, but they kept saying I was overreacting. Lily stayed neutral mostly, but I could tell she was frustrated that the situation was dragging out. So now I'm in this weird place where Mark refuses to talk to me. My family thinks I'm being unreasonable, and Lily is stuck in the middle. I genuinely feel like I did the right thing by sticking to my boundaries, but everyone else seems to disagree. So Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my apartment after he ignored my boundaries and showed up uninvited? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after an argument about our childhood? I, 27F, live with my husband, 29M, and our 2-year-old daughter in a moderately sized house in a quiet neighborhood. My younger sister, Emily, 24F, has been dating her fiancé, Ryan, 26M, for about 3 years. They've been engaged for 6 months, and their wedding is scheduled for next year. Recently, Emily mentioned that they wanted to visit us for a weekend and stay over because they didn't want to spend money on a hotel. At first, I didn't think it was a big deal, but things escalated in a way I never expected. Emily and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was always the golden child in our family, and I often felt overlooked. Our parents unintentionally reinforced this by praising Emily for grades, behavior, and extracurriculars, while I had to constantly prove myself to be acknowledged. I eventually worked through most of that resentment as an adult, but it still flares up occasionally. My husband knows about this and has always encouraged me to set boundaries with her when necessary. So, a few days before their visit, Emily called to catch up and said Ryan would be joining her. During the conversation, she casually mentioned an incident from our childhood that completely blindsided me. She laughed and said, "Remember how you always cried when Mom made me wear your hand-me-downs? You were so dramatic about it. And Dad kept saying you were jealous of me all the time. Classic you." I froze. I hadn't thought about that in years, but it reopened a wound. Those hand-me-downs weren't just clothes to me. They were a symbol of feeling like I was never good enough. I tried to brush it off and change the topic, But she kept going, saying things like, "And you were always whining about your toys being broken while I got everything new. It's funny you're still sensitive." I don't know what came over me, but I snapped. I told her that I didn't appreciate her bringing up old stuff to mock me, that it hurt, and that I didn't think it was appropriate for Ryan to be there while she acted like this. Emily immediately got defensive, saying, "I wasn't mocking you. I was just joking. You're too sensitive. Why do you take everything so seriously?" We ended up having a long argument over the phone. I told her that I loved her, but I wasn't willing to have someone stay in my home who was going to ridicule me, even jokingly, for something that happened 20 years ago. She accused me of overreacting and claimed I was holding a grudge over minor childhood things, and that Ryan shouldn't be punished for it. I explained that I didn't want anyone staying in my home if the dynamic wasn't respectful, and that I would be okay with them visiting but not staying over. She then said something that really hurt. She told me that Ryan was looking forward to meeting my family properly, and implied that my refusal was selfish and made me seem petty. I reminded her that we had hosted her and Ryan before, but this time it wasn't about hospitality. It was about creating a space where I felt safe and respected. I suggested they stay at a nearby hotel instead, and I'd be happy to meet them for dinner or a day outing. Emily blew up, saying I was punishing her for having a good life and a good memory, and that our parents would be disappointed in me for not welcoming them. She said Ryan was really excited to spend a weekend with us, and by refusing, I was making things awkward. I didn't respond to her immediately because I needed to cool down. My husband backed me up, saying that while it would be nice to host them, he understood why I was setting boundaries. He also reminded me that Emily had a history of bringing up old conflicts in ways that were hurtful and that it wasn't unreasonable to protect my mental health. The weekend of the visit came, and Emily sent me multiple texts demanding to know if Ryan could stay. I repeated calmly that they were welcome to visit, but I couldn't host them overnight. Emily stopped responding for a day, and when she finally replied, it was passive-aggressive. She said, "Fine. I guess we'll see you for a couple of hours then. Hope that makes everyone happy." I went ahead with our planned activities. Emily and Ryan arrived, but Ryan seemed uncomfortable, probably sensing tension. Emily barely apologized for bringing up the past and kept making small digs about my sensitivity. It ruined part of the visit for me, but I managed to keep my composure. The next day, I received a text from my mom. She said, "Emily called crying and said you were mean to her and Ryan. She doesn't understand why you can't just let them stay over." I tried explaining calmly, but my mom's response was, "We always try to treat you both fairly, but maybe you should learn to forgive and move on. It was just a joke." Now, I'm stuck wondering if I overreacted. I feel like hosting someone who repeatedly mocks my past, even jokingly, crosses a line. But Emily and my mom seem to think I'm being petty, especially since this is just family. I want to maintain a relationship with Emily, but I also want to feel respected and safe in my own home. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house because of an argument about her childhood. AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after a decade-long feud over something seemingly small. I, 29M, and my younger brother, Alex, 26M, have always had a tense relationship, but I thought we could manage it until recently. Our issues started when we were teenagers and escalated slowly over the years. It's a long story, but I'll try to summarize. When we were about 15 and 12 respectively, my parents gave me a guitar for my birthday. I had been saving up for months, so I was thrilled. Alex, who was always a bit envious of me, tried to play it almost immediately after I unwrapped it. I told him no because I was still learning and didn't want the strings messed up. He got angry, grabbed it anyway, and in the scuffle, he broke one of the strings. That day, he got a lecture, but honestly, it wasn't the lecture that bothered him. It was the fact that he had to hear a "you shouldn't have done that" lecture from me. Since then, even minor disagreements would blow up into arguments, and we stopped sharing anything. Fast forward to college, I moved out and tried to maintain a cordial relationship. Alex stayed in our hometown. I visited during holidays, but the visits were always tense. During one Christmas, Alex borrowed my laptop without asking. When I confronted him, he accused me of being controlling and stormed off. From then on, we barely spoke outside of family gatherings, and even those were awkward. Now here's the recent issue. Alex got engaged last year, and he invited me to the wedding. I was hesitant, given our history, but I agreed to go after his fiancée, Melissa, reached out to me and seemed genuinely nice. I thought maybe I could finally mend fences. However, things went downhill during the planning stage. Alex started making passive-aggressive comments whenever I asked about the wedding or offered help. For example, I offered to help with the playlist, and he said, "I don't know why you think you'd have good taste in music for my wedding." I laughed it off, thinking he was joking, but then he continued with snide remarks in front of Melissa. It got worse. Last month, Alex asked me to attend a rehearsal dinner at a restaurant he picked. I was busy with work, so I said I might not be able to make it. He texted back, "Oh, don't worry about it. You probably wouldn't get along with anyone anyway." I felt hurt, but I tried to ignore it. Then the biggest issue happened. Alex requested I give a toast at the wedding. I was shocked because our relationship has never been good, and I don't feel comfortable giving a speech. I politely declined, saying, "I don't think I'm the right person for that. Maybe someone closer to you can do it." He got upset and started texting me angrily, saying I was being disrespectful, that I had always been selfish, and that I was ruining his big day. The straw that broke the camel's back was when I visited my parents last week. Alex cornered me and said, "If you don't make a speech, don't even think about coming to my wedding. You're making this about yourself again." I calmly said I was reconsidering attending, and he shouted, "Fine, be the weird, distant brother you always were." I've spoken to my parents about this, and they're split. Mom thinks I should attend because it's family and weddings are important. Dad understands my perspective, but says that my refusal might damage our already fragile family relationship. I've also spoken to Melissa privately. She was sad, but said she understands my decision and doesn't want me to feel pressured. I decided not to go. I sent Alex a message explaining that I cannot be a part of the wedding because I don't feel comfortable around him after everything that's happened. I emphasized that it's not about him marrying Melissa, but about our strained relationship. He went off on me, calling me selfish and saying I'm destroying any chance of reconciliation. Now, our extended family is aware, and some are criticizing me for being dramatic and not putting aside old grudges. Others are supportive, saying I shouldn't force myself into a situation that would make me miserable. My parents are trying to mediate, but Alex refuses to talk to me. I feel torn because I don't want to be the villain, but at the same time, I cannot pretend our relationship is fine. Every interaction with Alex has been exhausting, and the thought of sitting through his wedding while dealing with passive-aggressive comments or outright hostility is unbearable. I feel like attending, just for the sake of appearances, would hurt more than it would help. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my brother's wedding after years of tension, passive-aggressiveness, and emotional exhaustion. I've tried to keep the peace, but it seems like he's unwilling to meet me halfway, and I can't keep putting myself in situations that make me miserable. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move into my parents' house for an indefinite period. I, 26F, live in a different city from my family, but I'm very close to my younger sister, Lily, 22F. Our parents, Carol, 50F, and David, 52M, have a large house with an extra finished basement that's essentially a separate apartment. Over the years, they've often offered it to friends or family who needed a place temporarily, and I've always thought it was really generous of them. Here's where things get complicated. Lily started dating her boyfriend, Mark, 24M, about 6 months ago. At first, I liked him. He seemed polite, funny, and smart. My parents were also happy for her, and we all went out a few times together. But recently, the dynamic has changed, and it started affecting my relationship with my family. A couple of weeks ago, Lily told me that she and Mark were having some financial struggles. According to her, Mark's job hours got cut, and they couldn't afford their apartment rent anymore. She said they were considering moving into my parents' basement for a few months until they got back on their feet. She added that my parents had mentioned it might be an option if they really needed it. I told her that I didn't think that was a good idea. I explained that the basement is technically separate, but it's still part of my parents' house, and living there long-term could complicate things. For one, my parents are not used to having someone else living there full-time beyond short visit, and the basement isn't set up for two adults to live comfortably for months. I also mentioned that Mark and Lily have only been dating for a few months, and moving in together in my parents' house might create tension since my parents barely know him. Lily got upset. She said I was being overly dramatic and that it would only be temporary. She insisted that Mark was a good guy and that my parents wouldn't mind. I reminded her that while my parents might technically agree, I didn't think it was fair to put them in a situation where they had to accommodate someone for an indefinite period, especially without a clear plan for when he would leave. She argued that I didn't have to live there, so I shouldn't get a say. I didn't respond at first, but then I found out that she had already talked to my parents behind my back and told them that I was okay with them moving in when I explicitly told her I wasn't. My parents called me asking if I was actually okay with Mark and Lily staying for several months. I told them the truth. I wasn't comfortable with it. My mom seemed hurt, saying that she just wanted to help Lily and didn't want me to feel like I was meddling. My dad agreed, but admitted he was worried about how having them there might affect household dynamics. Things escalated from there. Lily started sending me passive-aggressive texts, saying things like, I guess you care more about mom and dad's comfort than mine, and I thought you'd at least support me in tough times. She even hinted that my reluctance was proof that I didn't really want her happiness. Mark has been messaging me occasionally too, try to convince me that it would be fine and that I was overthinking it. I tried to explain that this isn't about not wanting to help Lily, but about setting boundaries and respecting my parents' home. I even suggested alternative solutions, like helping them find a short-term apartment, helping them apply for emergency housing support, or lending them some money to cover rent temporarily. Lily and Mark dismissed all of these options, saying they were too complicated or too much effort, and that moving into my parents' basement was the simplest solution. Since then, our relationship has been tense. My parents have backed me up privately, but they don't want to upset Lily by saying no outright. I'm stuck in the middle, feeling guilty for trying to enforce boundaries, but also worried that letting them move in would create a long-term problem. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend move into my parents' house indefinitely, even though they are struggling financially and she feels hurt by my decision. AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her new boyfriend to my wedding after what happened at my engagement party. So this is going to be long, but I really need to get it out. I, 27F, recently got engaged to my partner, Alex, 29M, and we've been planning our wedding for about 6 months now. I'll admit, I'm very particular about my wedding and the guest list because my family has a history of drama, and I want this to be as smooth and stress-free as possible. Alex is amazing and supportive, and honestly, he's just as invested in keeping things calm as I am. Here's where things get tricky. My sister, Emma, 25F, has always had a bit of a chaotic streak when it comes to relationships. She's dated a lot of people in short bursts, and honestly, most of them I've never met because they broke up so quickly. She met her latest boyfriend, Chris, about a month ago. I hadn't met him yet, and from what I could tell on social media, he seems intense. Fast forward to my engagement party, which I planned to be a small, intimate gathering with only close family and friends. I asked Emma if she would be bringing anyone, and she said, yeah, Chris is coming. You'll love him. I tried to keep an open mind, thinking maybe he'd surprise me. Well, he did, but not in a good way. The engagement party started off fine. Everyone was talking, drinking, and enjoying themselves. But within an hour, Chris had made a few comments that were extremely inappropriate. He told a very personal story about his ex-girlfriend, completely unsolicited, criticized the catering setup in front of everyone, and then, out of nowhere, loudly accused Alex of being too controlling about the seating arrangement. Mind you, Alex hadn't said anything at all to him directly. The final straw came when he somehow got his hands on the guest book and decided to write a paragraph-long rant about how weddings are pointless social constructs and that he doesn't get why anyone needs one. People were laughing awkwardly, but you could feel the tension. My parents were mortified, and I spent the rest of the night trying to calm down both Alex and myself while Emma kept whispering, "Oh, he's just being funny. You don't get him." After the party, I talked to Emma privately and told her that Chris's behavior was unacceptable. I didn't feel comfortable having him at the wedding. Emma got incredibly defensive and said that I was being dramatic and that I was trying to control who she dates. I explained that I wasn't controlling her relationship, but that I have the right to curate the guest list for my wedding. She kept insisting that I was overreacting and that Chris wouldn't do that again. Alex backed me up completely, and we decided to stick to our decision. I sent Emma a formal message saying that Chris would not be allowed at the wedding and offered to have him meet her family and friends at a different time if she wanted. She called me immediately, yelling about how I was ruining her happiness and that I was turning our family against her. She even threatened to not come to the wedding herself. Since then, things have escalated. She's been posting vague, passive-aggressive stuff on social media about how some people think weddings are more important than relationships, and sending me long texts accusing me of being controlling. A few of my other relatives have expressed concern that I'm being too harsh, but the majority agree that Chris's behavior was over the top and that I'm justified. I feel really conflicted because I love my sister and don't want to ruin our relationship, but I also don't want my wedding to turn into another drama-filled event like the engagement party. Alex and I have worked so hard to plan a day we're excited about, and I feel like letting Chris come would completely undo that. So, Reddit, AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her new boyfriend to my wedding after his behavior at the engagement party. Character count, 6,421 if you want. I can write a second version that goes full viral Reddit style, with even more escalating family drama and subtle betrayals, which tends to get huge engagement on the sub. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my cousin's kids stay at my house after a huge argument with my husband. This is going to be a long one, so please bear with me. I, 32F, have been married to my husband, Daniel, 35M, for 8 years. We have a 6-year-old son, Ethan, and up until now, I thought we were pretty chill parents. Our house is small but comfortable, and we've always been careful to respect other people's boundaries. My cousin, Lisa, 34F, has 3 kids, ages 10, 8, and 5. Lisa and I have always had a somewhat competitive relationship. We're close enough to hang out a couple times a month, but there's always been a little tension, mostly because she likes to boast about how easy her kids are compared to others, and I've never really engaged because I didn't want to start a feud. But recently, she's been going through a messy divorce and apparently decided that we are her go-to backup plan whenever she needs a break. About 3 weeks ago, Lisa called me out of the blue and said she needed to go on a short trip for a weekend workshop and wanted to leave her kids with us. I hesitated, but said we could think about it. The first thing I asked was if her kids had any special needs, routines, or things I should know about, because I wanted to make sure it would work. Lisa waved it off and said, "They're fine. You'll manage." That should have been my first red flag. Fast forward to the weekend, she dropped them off. From the moment they arrived, things were chaotic. The kids didn't listen to any rules. They fought with each other constantly, left crumbs everywhere, spilled juice on the carpet, and generally acted like they owned the place. Ethan, my son, is used to a pretty calm environment, and by the end of the first day, he was crying because he couldn't have quiet time or play with his toys without being interrupted. Daniel and I tried to manage it, but we realized quickly that Lisa hadn't even given the kids basic instructions for bedtime, meals, or screen time. She had told them they could do whatever they wanted. By the second night, Daniel snapped at the kids because they refused to go to bed, and one of them pushed Ethan. There was yelling, tears, and Daniel was so stressed that he actually ended up with a migraine and stayed in the bedroom for the rest of the evening. I tried to talk to Lisa when she returned, gently explaining that her kids' behavior was hard to manage and that I don't mind helping out occasionally, but this level of chaos was not something I could handle frequently. Lisa got defensive and said I was exaggerating, that her kids were well-behaved and just energetic, and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. I was frustrated, but I tried to let it go. Then last weekend, she asked again if we could watch her kids for 2 days because she had another trip. Daniel and I talked it over, and I said no. I explained that it's not just about the weekend itself, but how her kids behave and the impact on Ethan. I also told her I couldn't handle being on edge the whole time and that Daniel is not obligated to be a babysitter for her. Lisa did not take it well. She called me multiple times, crying and accusing me of being a terrible cousin and not being family-oriented. She even sent a long text listing all the times I supposedly abandoned her in the past, which included things I barely remember. I responded politely at first, reiterating that we could spend time together with all the kids at our house for a few hours, but overnight stays weren't happening. Here's where it escalated. Yesterday, Lisa showed up at our door unannounced with kids. I was at home with Ethan, and Daniel was working late. I told her we were busy and couldn't accommodate the kids overnight. She started arguing, saying that family helps family, and that I was selfish for prioritizing my own child's comfort. Ethan was hiding behind the couch at this point, clearly upset. I stood my ground and said she could not leave the kids here. Lisa eventually stormed off, muttering about how I'll regret this. Now our extended family is involved. A few relatives have called, asking why we won't help Lisa out and suggesting that Daniel and I are overreacting. I feel bad that she's struggling, but I also feel like my boundaries are reasonable. I don't want to constantly host 3 kids who I can't manage, and I don't want Ethan to feel unsafe or stressed in his own home. Daniel supports me 100%, but I'm still getting messages from cousins and aunts implying that I'm selfish and not family-oriented. I know that family often helps each other, but I also believe there are limits, especially when children's safety and mental well-being are involved. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my cousin's kids stay at our house overnight, even after she asked repeatedly and then tried to show up unannounced. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, even though it caused a huge family fight. I, 17M, live with my mom, my older sister Emma, 25F, and her son Max, 5M, who's been staying with us for the past 6 months because Emma is going through a really rough patch financially. My sister has been struggling to make ends meet, and she asked if Max could live with us temporarily so she could get back on her feet. I agreed, mostly because I feel responsible for helping my family, and also because I like Max. At first, everything seemed fine. Max is sweet, well-behaved, and fun to be around. My mom is incredibly loving and supportive, so she handled most of the heavy lifting with his care. But over time, I started noticing patterns in how Emma treats Max that really bothered me. I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe she's just stressed, but it kept happening and it started affecting Max. For example, she constantly belittles him when he makes mistakes. If Max spills something or forgets a simple instruction, she'll call him stupid or lazy. She also yells at him for really minor things, like taking too long to eat or not putting his toys away fast enough. One time, I watched her scream at him for nearly 15 minutes because he didn't want to share a toy he had just received as a gift. Max ended up crying, and she shrugged it off, saying he needs to learn discipline. The thing that bothered me the most was how she controls almost every aspect of his life. She decides what he eats, what he wears, what shows he watches, and even who he can be friends with. She often tells him he can't do something before he even asks. I tried gently suggesting she give him more freedom or let him express himself, but she shuts me down, saying, "You're not his parent, don't interfere." I kept my frustrations to myself for months because I didn't want to start a fight, but last week, things reached a breaking point. Max had a small accident while playing in the yard. He knocked over a flower pot, and Emma immediately went off. She called him clumsy, told him he was ruining everything, and then sent him to his room without dinner. I was furious. I calmly asked Max if he was okay, and he said he was hungry, so I made him a sandwich. Emma came into the kitchen and saw me making food for him, and that's when the argument started. I told her that her behavior was harmful to Max and that he shouldn't be treated like that for small mistakes. I explained that yelling at a child constantly and putting him down could seriously affect his confidence and emotional well-being. She immediately got defensive, yelling at me that I had no right to tell her how to parent her own child and that I was overstepping boundaries. I reminded her that Max is living in our house, and if she couldn't treat him with respect while he's here, she shouldn't be living with us. What happened next was a full-blown argument. She accused me of trying to take over her role as a mother, said I was being judgmental, and even brought up old family issues, saying I always try to control everyone. My mom tried to mediate, but it didn't help. Emma left the house for the rest of the evening, and she hasn't spoken to me since. Max is confused and upset because he saw us fight, and I feel awful for upsetting him. Now, other family members have gotten involved. My cousins and aunt are saying I shouldn't have confronted Emma in front of Max, that I should have waited or found a subtler way to handle it. Some are calling me controlling and judgmental, saying that it's none of my business how she raises her son. On the other hand, my mom supports me, saying that Emma's behavior is unacceptable and that I was right to stand up for Max. I feel conflicted because part of me believes I did the right thing for Max, but the other part worries I may have escalated things too quickly and caused more damage than good. I also feel guilty because Emma's situation is complicated and she's struggling financially and emotionally. But seeing how upset and scared Max gets around her made me feel like I couldn't stay silent anymore. I want to have a good relationship with my sister and support her while she gets back on her feet, but I also can't just ignore how she treats her son. I'm trying to figure out how to approach this without causing another fight, but I don't know if that's even possible. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, even though it caused a huge family fight. Character count, 6,225 if you want. I can also draft an even longer version closer to 7,000 characters with more family dynamics, Max's reactions, and the aftermath of the argument, which tends to make these stories go viral on Reddit. Do you want me to do that? AITA for confronting my brother over his parenting choices, even though it caused a huge family rift. So, this is a long one, and I'll try to give all the necessary context. I, 32F, have a younger brother, Ben, 28M, who has a 3-year-old daughter, Lily. Ben and his ex-girlfriend broke up shortly after Lily was born, and since then, he has been raising her primarily on his own. I have always admired him for trying to be a hands-on dad despite the difficulties, and I'm generally close with him. Our parents live out of state, and while they visit sometimes, they aren't part of Lily's everyday life. The issue started a few months ago when Ben's girlfriend, Naomi, 26F, moved in with him. Initially, everything seemed fine. I liked Naomi. She's friendly and seemed genuinely interested in Lily. However, I started noticing some red flags in how she interacted with Lily. Lily is shy and sensitive, and Naomi seemed impatient with her. She would get frustrated when Lily asked questions repeatedly or want to play with her toys, and sometimes she would snap at her in ways that I thought were unnecessary. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe I was being too sensitive, but it kept happening. A few weeks ago, I came over for dinner and saw something that made me really uneasy. Lily was sitting at the table coloring, and she accidentally knocked over a cup of water. Naomi immediately yelled at her, calling her clumsy and saying she can't do anything right. Lily started crying, and Ben just sighed and told her to clean it up herself. I was shocked. Ben has always been kind and patient with Lily, and this behavior from both adults seemed harsh. I tried to excuse it in my mind, thinking maybe it was just a stressful day, but it stayed on my mind all evening. After dinner, I drove home, feeling conflicted. I ended up sending Ben a long text, trying to be careful about how I worded it. I told him I was worried about how Naomi was treating Lily and that I thought it might be affecting her emotionally. I didn't tell him to break up with her or that he was a bad dad. I just wanted him to consider whether the dynamic was healthy for Lily. Ben didn't respond immediately, which was unusual for him. The next day, he called me, and the conversation quickly escalated. He accused me of interfering and not respecting his choices as a parent. He said that Lily is his responsibility, not mine, and that I had no right to judge how he runs his household. I tried to stay calm and explained that my only concern was Lily's well-being, not controlling his life. He got louder and said I was being manipulative and overstepping boundaries. I ended the call because I didn't want to make things worse, but I felt hurt and anxious. After that, I reached out to my parents, hoping for some perspective. They said they understood my concerns, but told me I might be coming across as judgmental. They suggested giving Ben space. I tried, but I kept thinking about the way Lily looked that night and how Naomi had snapped at her. A week later, Ben posted on social media about a family conflict without naming names, but it was clear to everyone that it was about me. Some family friends started messaging me, asking if I had issues with Ben's girlfriend and insinuating that I was trying to control his parenting. I felt isolated because even my closest friends didn't fully understand the situation. I haven't seen Lily in over a month because Ben stopped inviting me over. I've sent her toys and a few letters, which he hasn't replied to. I feel guilty because I miss her terribly, and I keep wondering if I handled things the wrong way. I didn't want to damage my relationship with my brother or Lily, but I couldn't ignore my instincts either. Some of my friends say I did the right thing by speaking up, especially since children need supportive environments. Others say I should have minded my own business and let Ben handle his family life. I know I could have approached it differently, maybe more gently, but I genuinely didn't know how to address it without seeming critical. So, AITA for confronting my brother about how his girlfriend treats his daughter, even though it caused a huge rift in our family. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.